I was working the front desk at a hotel in Amsterdam when an American guest demanded I remove the speed camera fine from his bill. He'd been caught doing 87 in a 50 zone on the A10 highway. The letter clearly stated the violation, the speed, and the €240 fine. He said fines can't be added to hotel bills in a free country. I explained that in the Netherlands, rental companies and hotels are legally required to provide driver information to authorities. He told me that violated his constitutional rights. I asked which constitution. He said the one that matters. When I clarified that Dutch law applies in the Netherlands, he insisted he had diplomatic immunity as an American citizen. He pulled out his regular passport as proof. Not a diplomatic passport, his tourist passport. He read the inside cover aloud. The part about the Secretary of State requesting passage without delay or hindrance. He said that meant he couldn't be fined. I explained that's not what diplomatic immunity means, and tourists don't have it anyway. He said his taxes pay for NATO, so technically he outranks Dutch police. He demanded to speak to the American embassy. I gave him their number. He called them on speakerphone. The embassy staff patiently explained he had to pay Dutch fines. He accused them of being sympathetic to European socialism. He asked if they were even real Americans. The embassy worker said she was from Michigan, and he still had to pay the fine. He paid with his credit card and asked for a complaint form about Dutch fascism. We don't have those forms. That's the level of cultural anthropology I deal with here. Not headlines or theories, but lived absurdities that reveal how national myths unravel abroad. Most channels chase stories. I document patterns. If you recognize that difference, you already know where you belong. Last month, I watched a woman at Schiphol Airport argue with border control because they wanted to stamp her passport. She kept pulling it away, saying she didn't consent to government tracking. The officer explained passport stamps are mandatory for non-EU visitors. She said that's exactly what China does. The officer said yes, most countries stamp passports. She asked to enter without documentation as a free individual. That's not how international borders work. At a cafe in Brussels, an American asked why he couldn't smoke inside. When I explained Belgium's smoking ban, he said Europe fought wars for freedom, and now they're banning choices. He was literally sitting 15 feet from the smoking terrace. He said making him go outside was discrimination against Americans, and that was just Tuesday. I work at a grocery store in Munich. An American man tried to return a bottle of wine because it had 14% alcohol instead of the 12% listed online. Store policy is no returns on alcohol. Pretty standard across Germany. He said that violated consumer protection laws. I explained our return policy is clearly posted, and German consumer law allows businesses to restrict alcohol returns for safety reasons. He said in America, the customer is always right, and Germany should adopt that freedom. I told him we have different customer protection standards that actually favor consumers in most cases, just not for alcohol returns. He pulled up the U.S. Constitution on his phone. He started reading the Commerce Clause. He said it guaranteed free trade between states and, by extension, between allied nations. I told him the U.S. Constitution doesn't apply in German supermarkets. He said it applies to American citizens everywhere. That's not how international law works. He asked for my manager's manager. I got the store director. The American explained his constitutional argument again. My director, who has a law degree from Heidelberg, patiently explained that German commercial law applies in Germany regardless of customer nationality. The American said, that's exactly what the British said before 1776. He left the wine and said he'd be reporting us to the American Chamber of Commerce in Germany. He did. They sent a polite email explaining German retail law to him. He replied, asking if they'd been compromised by European bureaucrats. Most people travel to see landscapes. I collect case studies in cognitive dissonance, how belief systems collapse under context. If you want to understand people, not just places, that's the lens I bring every week. Subscribing just keeps it in focus. I'm a police officer in Copenhagen. I stopped an American woman for cycling without lights at night. This is a 700 kroner fine, about $100. She immediately started filming me on her phone. She announced she was recording for her safety. I said that's fine. Danish police encounters are often recorded. She seemed disappointed I didn't object. She said she had rights. I agreed and asked for identification. She asked if I had probable cause. I explained I watched her cycle without lights, which is illegal under Danish traffic law, paragraph 71. She said in America, police need probable cause for stops. I told her this isn't America, and I literally just explained the violation. She asked if I had a warrant. I don't need a warrant to issue traffic citations. She said this was a clear Fourth Amendment violation. I don't enforce the U.S. Constitution. She refused to show identification. I explained that in Denmark you must provide identification when cited for a violation. She said she had the right to remain silent. I told her that's for criminal investigations, not traffic stops, and also this is Denmark. She asked for my badge number to report me for constitutional violations. I gave her my badge number. She wrote it down and said she'd be contacting her congressman. I issued the citation. She refused to sign it. I explained that in Denmark, signatures aren't required. The fine goes to the address associated with your identification, which I would now need to request formally since she wasn't cooperating. She finally showed her passport. I wrote the citation. She said this would never hold up in court because I violated her Miranda rights. Denmark doesn't have Miranda rights. We have different procedures. She called me a communist and cycled away. Still without lights. I issued a second citation by mail. I manage a pharmacy in Oslo. An American man wanted to buy pseudoephedrine cold medicine without showing identification. In Norway, pseudoephedrine sales are tracked to prevent methamphetamine production. You need ID, and there are purchase limits. He said tracking medicine purchases violates medical privacy. I explained Norway's system balances privacy with drug prevention. All EU countries have similar systems. He said the EU isn't free like America. I mentioned Norway isn't in the EU, but we do have medicine tracking regulations. He called it a surveillance state. I pointed out his American pharmacy likely tracks the same medications under the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act. He paused. He said that's different because it's for freedom. I asked how. He said, American laws protect liberty, while European laws restrict it. I asked if requiring ID for cold medicine restricts liberty. Why doesn't the American version? He said the US does it to fight crime, while Europe does it for control. I noted those are the same justification. He said the intent is different. The intent seems identical. He bought regular ibuprofen instead and lectured me about how Norway should learn from American freedom. I didn't mention Norway ranks higher than the US in basically every freedom index. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. I teach at a university in Vienna. During a seminar, an American exchange student interrupted constantly. After the fourth interruption, I asked her to wait until the discussion portion. She said I was violating her free speech. I explained that Austrian classrooms have structured discussion times. She said in America, students can speak whenever they have thoughts. I told her that in Austria and most of Europe, we view education as collaborative, which requires taking turns. She said that's censorship. She pulled up the First Amendment on her laptop. She read it aloud to the class. 19 Austrian students stared at her in silence. I waited until she finished. I asked if she understood the First Amendment applies to government restricting speech, not classroom management. She said education is government. I noted this is a public university, but classroom structure isn't speech restriction. I asked if she thought American teachers let students interrupt lectures freely. She admitted probably not. I asked how that's different. She said American teachers do it for educational reasons, while European teachers do it for obedience. The distinction she was drawing seemed entirely emotional. Austrian students were visibly confused. One asked if American universities have no discussion structure. I explained most American classrooms function similarly to ours. The exchange student said those professors are exceptions. She filed a complaint with the International Student Office. They explained Austrian academic culture. She said she was being discriminated against for being American. They showed her the classroom conduct policy she signed. She said she signed under duress. She wasn't under duress. She switched to online courses. I work at a museum in Prague. An American tourist tried to take flash photography in a 14th century chapel. We don't allow flash because it damages medieval pigments. I politely asked him to turn off his flash. He said he paid admission and can take whatever photos he wants. I explained flash photography damages the artwork, which is why it's prohibited. He said in America, museums can't restrict photography. I told him many American museums absolutely restrict flash photography. He said those are suggestions, not rules. I showed him the posted signs in English, Czech, and German clearly stating no flash photography. He said signs aren't laws. I explained this is private property with posted rules. He said he has freedom of expression. I clarified that freedom of expression doesn't include damaging 600-year-old frescoes. He said I was interpreting that wrong. I asked if he'd read the Czech Constitution. He hadn't. I had. It doesn't grant tourists the right to damage cultural heritage with camera flashes. He started arguing loudly about American freedoms applying universally. Security came over. He filmed them and announced he was documenting human rights violations. Security explained the photography rules again in English. He said this was exactly like Tiananmen Square. We escorted him out. He left a 1-star review saying Prague hates freedom. The chapel survived the 30 Years' War, but apparently can't handle American tourists with flash photography and opinions. I'm a restaurant manager in Barcelona. An American diner lit a cigarette at his outdoor table. Spain banned smoking in restaurant terraces in 2011. I informed him smoking isn't allowed. He said he was outside. I explained the ban includes outdoor dining areas. He said that defeats the purpose of being outside. I told him the law aims to protect restaurant workers and other diners. He said Spain should let business owners decide. I noted that as the business owner, I'm following Spanish law. He said I should fight for my rights. I don't want smoking in my restaurant. He asked why I hate freedom. I don't hate freedom. I just prefer customers not smoke next to other people's food. He argued Spain used to allow smoking everywhere. I agreed things changed. He said that's government overreach. I mentioned Americans also have smoking restrictions in restaurants. He said those are different because they're American. I couldn't identify what made American smoking bans different from Spanish ones, besides geography. He claimed American laws come from the people, while European laws come from bureaucrats. I pointed out Spain is a democracy. He said it's not the same kind. He stubbed out the cigarette on his plate and asked where the real freedom section was. I told him smoking is allowed on the street 10 meters from the terrace. He paid and left, muttering about the EU destroying liberty. Spain's smoking laws predate current EU regulations, but facts weren't winning this conversation. I work immigration at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. An American man approached my booth holding his passport like a shield. Before I could speak, he announced he knew his rights and wasn't answering questions without a lawyer. I asked for his passport. Standard procedure. He reluctantly handed it over while maintaining eye contact like we were in a standoff. I asked the purpose of his visit. Tourism. Length of stay. 5 days. These are normal questions we ask every visitor. He said he didn't have to tell me anything beyond basic information. I agreed and told him these were the basic questions. He asked if I was detaining him. I explained he was in an airport immigration queue, which everyone goes through. He said he wanted to proceed without delays. I told him that's what we're doing. He asked if he was being singled out. I looked at the 200 people in line behind him. No, this is the process for everyone. He said in America, immigration doesn't ask invasive questions. I've been to America. They absolutely ask these same questions. He demanded to know why Europe needs so much information about tourists. I explained this is standard border control everywhere, including the United States. He said American border security is for safety, while European border control is for surveillance. The questions are identical. I asked if he had return tickets. He said that's private information. I explained it's a standard question to verify temporary stay. He accused me of assuming he'd overstay illegally. I wasn't assuming anything. I was asking a routine question that appears on the entry card he filled out. He asked for a supervisor. I called my supervisor. The supervisor asked the same questions. The American asked if this was coordinated harassment. My supervisor explained these are EU standard questions asked to millions of travelers daily. The American said the EU is paranoid. We stamped his passport after a 20-minute conversation that should have taken 45 seconds. He told us we should learn from American freedom and efficiency. American immigration took him 35 minutes when I visited New York last year. Here's what I've learned working with tourists. Americans often believe their specific version of freedom is universal, and that any deviation is oppression. Constitutional rights become personal rights that travel internationally. Laws in other countries are suggestions unless they match American preferences. The strangest part is the inconsistency. They'll defend European laws when they align with American ones, and call identical laws tyranny when they don't. If you've made it this far, you already see culture as code, not chaos. That clarity's rare, but that's what this channel exists for. I publish new dissections like this every week. Subscribing doesn't help me. It just keeps you fluent in how the world actually works. Traffic fines are freedom in America, but fascism in Germany. ID requirements for medicine are safety in the US, but surveillance in Norway. The only variable is location. And somewhere right now, another American is confidently explaining the Bill of Rights to a confused Finnish police officer who's just trying to issue a parking ticket.